My girlfriend likes to test how much I love her. She pretends to be sick to make me go out in the rain at night to get her medicine. She purposely leaves the scent of men's cologne on her clothes to make me jealous. She even made me wait for 3 hours in the rain just so she could show off in front of her friends. I decided on my own to break up with her. She thought I was just being moody. On my birthday, she called me. "Stop being upset," she said. "Come to the Starlight Club tonight. I have a surprise for you." I told her I was busy today, but she didn't buy it and laughed. "What could you possibly have to do? I'm getting married today." There I was, holding a cake, waiting under Grace's apartment for the 3rd hour. All my messages to her went unanswered. Just as I was about to leave, I heard cheers from above. Grace and her friends popped out from the balcony, whistling excitedly. "Frank, Grace said you'd wait for her in the rain for 3 hours. We didn't believe it, but it's true. Your love is so enviable. Grace is so lucky." They laughed, teasing Grace. I stood there, stunned, watching them. Everything around me seemed to fade to black and white. All I could see was Grace. She had a smile on her lips, looking at me like I was a puppy that earned her some applause. Suddenly, I felt a sharp pain in my chest, like someone tore it open. The cold wind rushed in, making it ache even more. Grace waved at me. "Frank, come here." I looked at her for a few seconds, then turned and walked into the rain. We'd been together for 5 years, from when I had nothing to now when she started her own company. Grace went from being a poor girl to a small business owner, and I was there every step of the way. When she closed her first deal, she hugged me and cried like a kid. "Frank, I promise I'll always treat you well. I will always love you." Back then, she sounded so sincere, and I believed her without a doubt. I don't know when she changed. I only know that now, all she left me with are not so fond memories. She once pretended to be sick again to test my love, making me go out in the middle of a snowy winter night to get her medicine. With snow and ice outside, I slipped and fell 4 times on my way back to her. When I got home, Grace stood at the door and hugged me. She said, "Baby, you're so good." Then she admitted she wasn't sick, just testing my love. I don't know what I felt then. The pain from the falls made my eyes burn. Another time, she left another man's cologne smell on her clothes to make me jealous. We had the biggest fight ever because of it, but she just posted on social media. My baby must really love me. Otherwise, why would he be so jealous? Over the years, she's done too many ridiculous things. I've lost count. When I walked by a trash can, I threw the cake I was holding into it. After all these years, Grace finally drained the love I had for her, little by little. Walking in the rain, I remembered a rainy night from years ago. Back then, Grace and I were just sophomores in college. I was coming back from tutoring when it started raining. As I got off the bus, I looked up and saw a girl standing under the dim streetlight. She was waiting for me with an umbrella, and as soon as she saw me, she ran over with a smile. She pulled a warm sweet potato from her arms and shoved it into my hand. "It's still hot. Eat it while you can." It was the first time I felt such open and passionate affection. But that was just 5 years ago. She's still the same person, but everything else has changed. I've been disappointed for a while, clinging to memories of the good times she gave me, hoping against hope. What if she could change back? But reality hit me hard. That was just wishful thinking. When she started using my affection as something to brag about, the love between us changed. Today's her birthday. I wanted to have a serious talk with her. About us, about the future. But Grace didn't give me the chance. She spent 3 hours laying out the truth. There was no future for us. Thinking about it now, those 3 hours were worth it. Before I left their site, I overheard them talking. "Frank seems upset," someone said. "Grace, should you try to calm him down?" Grace's voice was casual, almost careless. "No need, he's just acting out. I've gotten used to it. He'll come back on his own soon enough." She sounded so confident. She probably thought her success meant I'd never give up on someone like her. But I won't be coming back. "Grace, I'm done with you." One night, Grace didn't call even once. The next morning, I waited downstairs until I saw her leave for work. Then I went back to the home we shared. I left her a letter. No need to pack much. Just my ID and passport. As I pushed the door open to leave, I couldn't help but glance back. This was the apartment Grace and I rented after graduation. It was just an empty shell when we got it. We decorated it ourselves, picked out the furniture, and hung the lights together. When we had more money, we bought this place. It's small, but we never moved. Every bit of this place holds our memories. Now, those memories seem like a joke. When I boarded the plane to leave the city, I switched my phone card. I left everything tied to Grace there. Years later, I returned to the city by the sea. The taxi stopped in front of LG Estates gate. It's private property. No entry without permission. I rolled down the window. Tom, it's me. The aged security guard squinted at me. Frank, you're finally back. The estate was huge, but there weren't many people around. I kneeled in the yard for an hour, and no one came to slip a cushion under me. Dad, I really know I was wrong. Jason, now with graying hair, lay with his eyes closed in a rocking chair. He stayed silent for a long time before speaking. I can still remember how determined you were to leave for that poor girl. Your mother pleaded with you, and you wouldn't listen. I scolded you, even hit you, but it led to you wanting to cut ties with me. Dad, tears welled in my eyes. I'm sorry. From now on, I'll do whatever you ask. The chair stopped rocking. He slowly opened his eyes and looked at me. All right, then you should go ahead and marry Jenny. I was taken aback. Jenny? That unfamiliar name jolted my nearly forgotten memories back to consciousness. The Whites and my family go way back. I got engaged to Jenny when I was 18. When I left for Grace, I left it all behind, and even asked Jenny to call off our engagement. What did she say back then? She said, whatever you've wanted. I've always said yes. So I assumed our engagement was off. I looked up, confused. Jenny isn't married yet? By now, she must be 30. Who would she marry with you gone? My mom came out with a fruit platter, glanced at me. Get up now, enough kneeling. I clumsily stood up. I heard my mom say, since you're back, first thing is to apologize to the Whites and get the marriage license with Jenny. When I went to the Whites, Jenny wasn't there. I heard she's abroad for a project. The Whites elders were all happy to see me. It was different from what I imagined. There was no cold shoulder or sarcastic remarks. They said, we heard you spent the past few years abroad to relax. Since you're back now, will you stick around for a bit? I nodded, a bit stunned. Yes. An aunt took my hand and said, when Jenny suddenly decided to call off the engagement, it was unfair to you, and it was wrong on our part. Her dad already talked to her about it. We understood when you went abroad to clear your head. So, about you and Jenny's marriage. I felt so ashamed. I'll let the elders of both families decide. After leaving the Whites, I called Jenny. She picked up in just a few seconds. Her voice hadn't changed much, still calm and easygoing. Hello? Jenny, it's me. Facing Jenny, I felt really guilty. I didn't expect our engagement to still be intact. I paused. I imagine you wouldn't want to be tied to someone like me. I'll figure out a way to handle this as peacefully as possible. She interrupted before I could finish. Mind what? She said, you didn't commit any crime, just had a less than ideal relationship. That's not a stain. When's the wedding? She changed the subject so quickly, I didn't have time to react. Not set yet, but both sets of parents are eager. Okay, I'll be back soon. Even after the call ended, I felt a bit dazed. Kids in families like ours should already know, our marriage isn't in our hands. Understanding is one thing, accepting it is another. I think I could learn that from Jenny. Jenny came back half a month later. That same day, she brought gifts to the house. She seemed more mature and composed, spoke gently and humbly to my dad, and effortlessly charmed my mom. No wonder they like her so much. I watched from the side and sipped my tea the moment her eyes met mine. Our wedding was set for early May. That day, conveniently, is my birthday. While getting my hair done, I got a call from an unknown number. Hello? Wow, this number actually is yours. The voice sounded just like Susan, Grace's friend. Frank, finally found you. Frank, where have you been all this time? Grace is going nuts. I had no clue how she got this number. I just frowned slightly. Don't contact me again. Grace and I have broken up. A noise came through the line, then someone else picked up. You just left me a letter and broke up without asking. I didn't agree, so it doesn't count. It was Grace. Frank, why are you mad again? Is it because I made you wait 3 hours in the rain? Is something so small worth you running away? I listened silently, too tired to argue. It made me even more certain that leaving was the right choice. Okay, I'm sorry. Grace's voice softened. Honey, don't be mad. Okay? I just feel insecure. I wanted to see if you really loved me, so don't be upset. Today's your birthday. I prepared a surprise at the Starlight Club. Won't you come? I could hear guys and girls teasing in the background. Frank, Grace is gonna propose to you. Oh, so romantic. Get out of here. Grace laughed and scolded. There won't be any surprise if you spill the beans like that. Listening to the chaos over there gave me a headache, so I rubbed my temples. The hairstylist jumped and hurried to ask, I'm sorry, Frank, did I hurt you? No, keep going. All right, Frank. Today I'll make you the handsomest groom in the world. Grace sounded puzzled. Frank, what are you doing? I paused for a few seconds, then said clearly, Grace, I'm getting married today. The line went quiet, and just when I was about to hang up, Grace laughed. Frank, you're pulling my leg, aren't you? Trying to make me jealous? You almost got me. She sounded like she was faking it. I suddenly felt a sense of relief. Maybe it was realizing that we'd never be connected again. I'm not kidding. Got the license last month. Having the ceremony today. I laughed too. Not inviting you to the reception. It'd be awkward, and my wife wouldn't be happy. Frank. Grace's voice shot up. Are you done with your joke? I hung up and took out the SIM card, throwing it in the trash. The hairstylist was startled too and didn't move for a bit. I smiled at him in the mirror. Sorry about that, carry on. I got married to Jenny at a church in the city. The decorations weren't your typical cookie-cutter style. You could tell a lot of thought went into it. I couldn't help but ask the assistant which company did all this. It's pretty nice. The assistant whispered back, Frank, Jenny designed it herself. I was stunned. I didn't expect Jenny to put so much effort into this business marriage. There were guides who directed me on what to do and how to do it. I wandered into the hall almost on autopilot. Dressed in my sharp suit, I stood next to the priest. At the MC's signal, I turned to see her walking slowly towards me. The cheers from the crowd filled my ears as Jenny and I locked eyes. Was it just me, or was there a genuine sincerity in her smile? Maybe I could learn a thing or two from her about playing the part perfectly. I adjusted my expression as I watched her father lead her over and place her hand in mine. The ceremony went smoothly, but once it was over, our parents whisked us away for socializing with a myriad of uncles and aunts. After making the rounds, my legs felt like they were going to give out. It wasn't until 11 p.m. that we finally returned to our new home. It was a small villa in a nice, quiet area. I wandered off to take a shower, and when I came out, it was already midnight. Jenny was sitting on the couch in pajamas, her hair not fully dry with a few strands hanging over her forehead. She seemed a bit more approachable than her usual meticulous self. I noticed she was looking at a tablet, and instinctively asked, Still working this late? Jenny lifted her gaze from the tablet. Not working, just waiting for you. Truth be told, Jenny and I weren't that close, and we barely talked. As I was trying to figure out why she was waiting for me, she set her tablet aside and walked up to me. It was getting late. I nodded. Yeah, it is. So now what? Jenny said, It's time for bed. Before I realized it, Jenny had me pinned against the wall, making me look up at her. Her sudden move caught me off guard. I hadn't yet processed it when I started to feel the change in the mature woman's body across from me. The air around us became thick and heated. My thoughts slowed down. Maybe it was because I hadn't been with a woman in a while, or maybe because Jenny's body was so enticing. Or it could be because her gaze was burning into me. Without thinking, I found myself wrapping my arms around her neck. To the bedroom. We had tied the knot today, making our relationship perfectly legal. We didn't sign any prenups, and I certainly didn't plan on abstaining. With her here and ready to indulge me, How could I resist? In just a few seconds, I convinced myself. We both had something to gain. We're all adults here. We stumbled into the bedroom. My robe. God knows where it ended up. I thought someone like Jenny would be reserved or aloof, or maybe she'd be quietly passionate while looking all serious on the outside. But she didn't pretend at all. She showed me her true self, her desires, right from the get-go. The overhead light wasn't on, but I kept seeing it swinging in my mind. At the moment when my thoughts drifted to cloud 9, I couldn't help but bite Jenny's shoulder. She gasped softly and chuckled. "Frank, you're still such a biter, aren't you?" I didn't catch that. By then, I was pretty out of it. I had no idea how many bites I gave her. But when I woke up the next day, Jenny was facing away, getting dressed. Her back was beautifully shaped, even more so if you ignored the red-purple bite marks. I buried my head under the covers, pretending to be asleep. She finished dressing and came over to give my head a pat through the blankets. "I know you're awake. If you don't want to get up, don't. I'm heading to the office. Be sure to eat when you do get up." She delivered this in a slow, slightly raspy voice. Only after I heard the door close did I slowly emerge from under the covers. Lying on my back, staring up at the big chandelier, I felt lost in thought. I really didn't see this coming. After that night, my relationship with Jenny really got a lot closer. She'd come back in the evenings to have dinner with me, listening to all the gossip from the high society circles, and sometimes she'd even chime in. I'd go with her to various dinner parties, playing the part of the well-mannered gentleman by her side. As a partner, Jenny was pretty great too. She wasn't into playing around, got regular checkups, healthy and all that. This whole marriage arrangement was turning out way better than I expected. My parents noticed the change in me too. "Frank, you've been married a month, and you seem sturdier, and you've been looking a lot better," my mom said with a smile. "Means Jenny's really taking care of you." Huh? They say loving someone is like tending to a flower. If the flower's doing well, it shows. Then my mom's tone changed and she sighed. "Remember when you came back so suddenly before? You looked so worn out. It just broke my heart." My confident smile faltered for a second. I was in such a good mood. Dad, ever the pro at changing the subject, jumped in. "Now you're married, you should start focusing. Next month, come intern at the company and get a feel for the business," he said, laying down the plan for my next steps. When I got home that night, Jenny was heading to the study. She's super dedicated when it comes to work, sometimes staying late into the night. She asked, "Already had dinner?" "Yeah, you?" I asked politely. "Nope," she said. I was a bit taken aback. "It's late. I texted you that I wouldn't be home for dinner, though." Jenny nodded. I saw it. "But without you, I wasn't really hungry." Her words lingered in the air, and I was speechless for a few moments. Just as she stepped into the study, she paused and glanced back at me. "Is there something else?" I looked away, nonchalantly picking at my nails. "Nah, just that my dad wants me to help out at the company. I'm thinking of buying a place closer. This place is too far for commuting." "Then buy it," Jenny replied. "Just let me know when you decide on the location. I'll arrange for it to be set up, new place, new things." "Wait, I looked up suddenly. "Are you moving there too?" Jenny gave me a calm look. "We've only been married a little over a month. You're looking to split up already?" "But I swear." I caught a glimpse of disappointment in her calm tone. "That's not what I meant. If you want to move, that's fine," I said. "Great, then it's settled." Jenny smiled. "Get some rest, hubby." Even after she closed the study door, I was still a bit dazed. Is Jenny acting strange or what? Before starting at the company, Jenny and I moved to a nearby apartment. It's not too big, just right for the two of us. She doesn't stay over every day, so there was no point in getting a huge place. My dad didn't announce my identity at the company. He let me work as his assistant, learning the ropes firsthand with plenty of tasks to tackle. He was serious about grooming me. Once I got busy, time flew by. In no time, 6 months had passed. In early winter, an unexpected visitor showed up at the company. Susan. I was passing by the GM's office with some files when she caught up with me. "Frank?" She looked confused. "What are you doing here?" I didn't expect to run into her either. Gave a polite smile. "I work here." "And I'm not your Frank. She looked a bit awkward. Oops, I misspoke. She's a high-up at another company, likely here for business talks. We didn't chat much more, and I headed straight to the elevator to the top floor. Susan paused for a few seconds before turning back in and asked the manager, "What position does that gentleman hold here?" "Chairman's assistant," the manager said, puzzled. "Why?" "Oh, nothing." Susan paused, then asked, "Do you happen to know what his wife does?" The manager hesitated, then turned to his secretary. The secretary said, "I don't think Frank's married. Hasn't mentioned a wife." The moment Susan left the company, she called Grace. "Grace, guess who I ran into today?" For days after meeting Susan, I got stopped by Grace on my way home from work. She was in a fancy suit, leaning against a luxury car, catching the eyes of people passing by. "Frank," she called out to me, "you haven't done much better since we split." "Huh?" I ignored her and tried to walk past, but she frowned and grabbed my wrist. In a low voice, she said, "It's been long enough now. Don't you think it's time to let it go? You can come back to me and be the stay-at-home husband without any worries." I couldn't help it. I snapped, "Are you out of your mind? I told you, I'm married already." "Married? Who'd believe that?" Grace said nonchalantly. "Frank, who did you marry if I wasn't there?" Talking to her for just a few sentences exhausted me. Before I got another word out, a slender, pale hand reached over and pulled my hand away from Grace's grasp with assertive force. I had no idea when Jenny showed up or what she saw. She looked at Grace with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "He's married to me. Got any issues with that?" If I'm honest, Grace isn't short for a girl, but compared to Jenny, she seems smaller, maybe because Jenny brought a presence with her. Grace's expression finally changed as she looked at me and then at Jenny. She began to realize she had no special standing anymore with the boy who once saw only her. She asked, "Who are you?" I intertwined fingers with Jenny, my wife, Jenny. Jenny turned to me with a smile in her eyes. Maybe the sight of us got to Grace, and she became agitated. "Frank, did you really get married? Do I need to show you my marriage certificate?" She yelled, "How could you do this to me? I worked so hard for our future, networking late into the nights, and you dumped me over something trivial and married someone else. Frank, do you even have a heart?" "Stop acting all noble," Jenny interrupted, her voice cold. She glanced at the car on the side of the road. "Did you get that car for Frank too? Are you wearing those name brands for him as well? You seek approval, yet you stand high and judge? Who do you think you are?" And before Grace could argue, Jenny added, "Maybe what you think is trivial was actually a big deal for Frank." I never expected Jenny would speak up for me like this. I couldn't hold back and looked at her with admiration. As Grace looked over at me, I impulsively pulled Jenny's arm closer. "Honey, you nailed it." Jenny was caught off guard, her ears turning red. Grace, now livid, stepped forward and raised her hand toward Jenny. Susan, who had been secretly watching, couldn't stay hidden. She rushed over and tugged Grace aside. Jenny didn't look back once. She took my hand and led us away. We walked in silence all the way back to the apartment. At the door, feeling a bit awkward, I said, "Let go for a sec. I need to scan my fingerprint." As usual, we ate, took a shower, then she'd usually head to the study while I did some cardio. But tonight, she blocked my path straight out of the bathroom in her robe, pulling me into an urgent kiss, like she was burning alive. I barely caught a breath and, without thinking, tried to explain, "Grace and I are done. She just hasn't let go." Jenny's voice was husky. "I know. Then why are you? Just wanted to kiss you. Liar." One kiss led to another, and then we ended up on the bed. As awareness returned, I realized, oh crap, I've caught feelings for her. Why else would my first reaction be to explain everything to her and worry about her being mad? This business marriage wasn't straightforward anymore. But before I could think it over, my thoughts were drowned in the storm that Jenny brought. I didn't expect to see Grace again so soon. It was at a business banquet, and Jenny had brought me along. She chatted with the big shots, and I stood by, smiling. It's not easy work. After standing for a bit, my lower back started aching. That's a problem from a long time ago, from running around with Grace. Jenny leaned over and whispered in my ear, "Why don't you go sit and rest for a bit?" I nodded, slipping away quietly. But just before reaching the rest area, I stopped. I saw Grace. She was on the sofa, holding a glass of red wine, chatting with a group of young people. Grace looked stunning, and over the years, she'd gotten really good at conversation. Naturally, she caught a lot of attention. A bold young guy asked with a smile, "Grace, someone as young as you, do you have a boyfriend?" "No," she replied, sipping her wine with a hint of a smile. Then her eyes met mine from across the room. The guy continued, "Grace, someone with so much going on. How come?" Grace smirked a bit, "Just broke up." Someone teased, "Oh, looks like Grace is nursing a broken heart." In their back and forth, Grace started talking about her ex-boyfriend. He treated me like his whole world, brought me breakfast every morning, went out in the snow at night to get me cold medicine, and when I got drunk at a bar, he'd take me home. He once waited 3 hours in the rain for me. The group exchanged glances inside, asking her how she managed to lose such a good guy. Grace chuckled, looking up at me. "Yeah, how did I lose him?" Some kid asked, "Doesn't Grace feel bad about it?" Grace was caught off guard, turning to face him. He seemed like a rich kid, articulate and a bit aggressive. "Grace, you said he brought you breakfast, bought you cold medicine, waited for you in the rain for 3 hours. He went through so much, but you don't seem too bothered." The room went silent. Grace looked a bit embarrassed. The kid smiled apologetically. "Sorry, I'm pretty blunt. Don't take it personally, Grace. It's just listening to you talk." There seemed to be this undercurrent of pride. Surprised me. If my girlfriend waited that long for me in the rain, I'd be so worried. So it's no wonder that boy slipped away. He glanced at his watch and stood up to leave. This party's so boring, letting any kind of people in. That was a real slap in Grace's face. She looked pretty upset. That's when I went over and took a seat. "Frank?" Someone recognized me. "Where's your wife?" I smiled. "She's chatting with some friends." "What were you guys talking about?" "Seems like a lively chat." The person looked surprised, probably wondering where I got the idea it was lively. They seemed eager for a change in conversation and aimed it at me. "Frank and Jenny have a great relationship." "Yeah, just the other day at another event, I overheard Jenny talking non-stop about her husband. Made me a bit jealous." "Heard you were out of town for a few years, Frank, taking some time off?" I nodded. "Yeah, went out, hit a wall, hurt myself and came crawling back." They laughed, Frank always with the jokes. We chatted back and forth, but Grace stayed quiet. After a bit, Jenny came over. She didn't even acknowledge Grace, just walked right up to me. "Had enough rest? Time to go home?" She offered her hand, and I naturally placed mine in hers and we left together. Even after we left, we remained the center of their gossip. Someone quietly shared, "Heard that during those years Frank wasn't in the city. He didn't even go abroad, but dated some poor chick and had a falling out with his folks." "What?" a girl exclaimed. "To leave so recklessly and then come back. Must have been heartbroken." A girl, fresh off studying abroad, pointed at us leaving and asked, "Who are they?" The person filled her in. "Frank is the only son of JF Group. Jenny's running Future Tech now. They got hitched last year. It was a business marriage, but they seemed genuinely in love." Grace was a bit stunned. "Frank is who?" Jenny pulled me into the garage. The driver had already brought the car around. As I got in, a young girl's face suddenly turned around from the front passenger seat. "Hi, wait a second. Is this the same girl who was just going off on Grace?" But no, that person was a guy. Or was it? I remember being a guy, but now there's a girl? I blinked, looking at her confused. "Who are you?" "Mandy." Jenny introduced the girl as she got in from the other side. "My cousin. She just got back from abroad yesterday." I quickly greeted her, "Hello." Mandy looked at me, grinned, and said, "My sister has been talking about you for years, and now I finally see you. You're handsome." I didn't get a chance to ask what she meant before the driver screeched the car to a stop. Jenny instinctively reached her hand to protect my head. The driver rolled down the window. "Are you trying to get yourself killed?" Grace was standing in front of the car. When she saw me in the back seat, She quickly walked around. Frank, get out. I need to ask you something. I rolled down the window to look at her. What? Grace caught her breath. Is it true what they're saying, that you're the only child of the JF group? Yes. She slammed her fist on the car. Then why didn't you tell me? Would it have made a difference? I asked. If you knew I was the only heir, would you not have tested my love for you relentlessly? Would it have made you feel secure? I smirked sarcastically. I doubt it. So Grace, what are you really upset about? The window rolled up bit by bit as I looked at Grace one last time. If you're going to date again, don't test people. If you can't trust them, don't waste the guy's time. Let's go. As the car drove away, I saw Grace's defeated figure shrink in the rearview mirror until it disappeared. We dropped Mandy off first, and as she got out, she exchanged contact info with me. The atmosphere in the car shifted subtly the moment she left. Jenny put her hand over mine. Are you tired? Not really. You can take a nap if you want. I wasn't in the mood to talk, so I closed my eyes, leaning against the window. Soon, a warm hand gently cradled my head, guiding it onto a shoulder. I heard a soft sigh. Jenny, I slowly opened my eyes. Do you like me? The air seemed to freeze for a moment. I felt Jenny stiffen, but she soon relaxed completely. Her voice was clear and sure. Yes. Why? I always thought we were just in a marriage of convenience. Frank, we've known each other for nearly 17 years. I thought back and realized it was true. We went to the same prep school and lived near each other for a while. That's how we met. But we never really talked much, and then we went to different schools after that. To me, Jenny was always the model child. My parents never put me down, but I often heard them praise her, saying she was polite, smart, and decisive. The idea of marrying Jenny came from the Whites. Though I don't know why exactly, my parents were thrilled about it, and I didn't mind the thought at the time. She seemed nice, marrying her was fine by me. As for her liking me, I never considered the possibility. Jenny said, "Do you remember where we met for the first time? That was so long ago, who remembers that?" I remained silent and she just smiled. I do. 17 years ago, I almost got kidnapped on the way to school. You saved me. From the depths of my memory, I pulled out that piece of history. Oh, that was you. I was just 10 years old back then. The school wasn't far from my home, but my parents were still worried. They had a bodyguard pick me up and drop me off every day. After all, kids from wealthy families are easy targets for criminals. One day after school, I saw a little girl being snatched and thrown into a van from a distance. I didn't think twice and told my bodyguard to follow the van. We trailed them for several kilometers until we cornered them in a remote alley. The bodyguard kept insisting I stay in the car, but I didn't listen and ran out. While he wrestled with the abductors, I used my small size to sneak into the van's trunk. I untied the girl, who was badly beaten up, and started pulling her out. She was skinny and shorter than me. Just as I was about to get her out, the driver noticed us and lunged towards us. I got scared, yanked the girl hard, and bit the guy's wrist. Right then, the girl's bodyguard showed up with the police. Seeing this, the kidnappers fled in a hurry. We sat on the roadside. The girl was too scared to speak, and I just stared at a pretty shell in my hand, silent as well. I had dropped it from my pocket during the fight, and when I picked it up, it was covered in dust. The girl beside me suddenly started sobbing quietly. I turned to her, awkwardly trying to comfort her. "Don't cry. The bad guys are gone." Trying to mimic how adults comfort me, I said, "Don't cry. I'll give you a gift." She looked at me with teary eyes. What kind of gift? I didn't expect her to actually want something, so in a slight panic, I offered her the most unique shell I had. Jenny, who was next to me, laughed. "I still have that shell." I covered my face, blushing, and couldn't hold back. "You're something else." "Just kidding." Jenny laughed even more. "I put it in a box and kept it on my bedside table when I got home. I found out your name and class. From then on, I started noticing you. You're different from the other spoiled kids I know. You can make friends with anyone and spend an afternoon playing with a stray dog by the roadside. I was the one who pushed for our marriage." Jenny's voice paused, then got softer. "That's why, when you asked me to dissolve the engagement, for a moment, I didn't want to agree. I pressed my lips together. But you agreed. Yeah, I did, and I went through with it, she said. The elders didn't agree, but there's no denying that if I really tried, our engagement would have been voided. She didn't exert herself because she secretly wanted to keep our relationship. Her words made my heart skip a beat. I wasn't sure what to feel. Something bittersweet. Jenny looked at me and smiled. What? Feeling bad now? So that's it. I nodded, a little. Jenny was taken aback, silent for a moment. I reached out to hold her arm. I wasn't lying earlier. I don't like Grace anymore. I'll have nothing to do with her from now on. Since we got married, making our life together work is what matters the most. While Jenny was taking a bath, Mandy sent me a message. Frank, she's bubbly. If my sister ever treats you badly, just come to me, and I'll help you set her straight. I laughed and texted back. All right. Within seconds, she replied. But that won't happen. My sister's got a tough exterior but a warm heart. She likes you so much. How could she be bad to you? She seemed to spill the beans. A year ago, when you suddenly called my sister, she was at my graduation ceremony. As soon as she heard you wanted to marry her, she left me by myself overseas and headed back. The bathroom door opened. Jenny came out. She glanced at me. Why aren't you asleep yet? I put down my phone, looked up at her intensely. Waiting for you. She paused for a moment, and I stood up and slowly embraced her. Sorry for making you wait so long. Jenny looked down at me, with emotions swirling in her eyes. In an instant, her kiss fell upon me. The lights in the room went out, and only the glow of my phone screen flickered. Mandy, are you listening? Mandy, why aren't you responding? I swear what I said is true. I'm not my sister's wingman, and I didn't get a big red envelope from her. Mandy, huh? Why isn't my sister responding either? What are you two up to?